my desk is a mess right now, but we're not gonna worry about that. Today I just want to make a quick video talking about some of the settings that beginner photographer gets overwhelmed over when they first stepped into the world of using an actual camera, upgrading from their smartphone or a point and shoot, whatever camera they may have, and they pick up a mirrorless camera, or they have their parents' old DSLR or an old DSLR lying around the house. And the settings you might see if you have like a traditional mirrorless camera or a DSLR, at the top you have a little dial, and it has a lot of letters on it. But the letters that most people are focusing on is M, AV, TV, and P. And a lot of people get very overwhelmed and just get scared of these letters, like, I don't know what it does, I don't know what they are. Well, these settings overwhelmed me as well when I first started shooting pictures, when I first started using a camera. I didn't know what they meant, I didn't know what it does. I stuck on P for the longest time. So that's basically program mode. A lot of the other cameras, you're gonna see it as auto maybe. On Fuji's, you have a little dial that says A, that's auto. Sony, I believe, has A as well, but on Canon, it's called P, program mode. It's basically when the camera has control over everything. And then the other two are AV and TV, they're aperture priority and shutter speed priority. No idea why it's called T, I think it's something with time. It's like speed and stuff. And the last one is M, manual, which basically is your camera doesn't have any control over the settings. You are the one that's manually dialing in all the settings. And all of these settings, it lets the camera know whether or not if the camera itself needs to take over for the photographer in adjusting the settings, or if the camera will be like, all right, I'm not gonna do anything. This is all you, man. This is all the photographer's job. You tell me what to do and I'll do it. My honest opinion, I think every single photographer, every single videographer, whoever has a camera, eventually you will want to reach a point where you're using manual. But if you're starting out, it's okay if you start on program. It's okay if you start on automatic mode, because that's what program is. That's what auto is. It helps the photographer to not be overwhelmed with ISO, aperture, shutter speed, because they don't know what you might not know what is the right setting to use. A lot of my friends always ask me, say, what setting should I use? You're just not experienced, and you're not comfortable enough with your camera and the settings and all the other things that's going on to figure out what's the right setting that you should be dialing in into your camera. So in the beginning, it's okay to have your camera take over all these settings and you just focus on the composition, which in my opinion, composition is very important when it comes to taking pictures. You need to know what you want to keep in frame to make it a better picture. Sometimes you want to remove something out of the frame to make sure it's not too distracting, where your subject is, whether it's going to be on the center, on the sides. Composition of a picture is going to be a lot more important, and the earlier you get your composition down, the better it will be later on when you actually start dialing in your own settings and start doing things more manually, sort of. That way you can actually produce a picture that tells a better story. Now the other two modes, AV and TV, aperture priority, shutter speed priority. Personally, I don't use it as much. I know some photographers do, just depending on the settings. If it's a super fast-paced setting and you need to, or you don't have the time to manually change 3-4 settings at the same time, if you're including white balance as well, I don't usually set my white balance, then yes, some photographers use AV and TV. That way the camera either adjusts the aperture automatically or the camera adjusts the shutter speed automatically. Aperture priority allows the camera to determine what the shutter speed it should be while giving the user control over what aperture it should be. So if you have a prime lens that goes down to f1.8, 1.4, 1.2, and you want that nice blurry depth of field and background and bokeh and all that good stuff, you're going to want to be in aperture priority mode. You get control over that aperture setting. You want to keep it as low as possible for some nice and pleasing pictures, or for low light so you can let as much light into your camera as well. Shutter speed priority is the exact opposite. The camera determines what aperture you should be in while you adjust the shutter speed. If you want to take panning shots, slow motion shots, where you want some just general motion in your shots, it'd be a good idea to put in shutter speed priority so that you can control whether or if you want the shutter speed to be fast, where you freeze the action, or the shutter to be slow and you just have motion blurs and motion is all over the place. Now again, going to the last one, where I think every photographer should eventually end up in, and this is when you are getting comfortable with your camera. Like, you really understand what your camera is, and this is no longer just a tool, but an extension of yourself, of your body, so that you are extremely comfortable with using your camera in all sorts of settings and all different kinds of settings, is manual mode. Manual mode is like driving a manual car where your car just doesn't switch gears until you tell it to. It's very complicated. I've never driven a manual car, but if you've ever met a manual car driver, if you've ever met someone that drives a manual car, I'm sure they will tell you how much they enjoy driving a manual car. I've seen the hashtag save the manual, or like just pops up everywhere because of how people are enthusiastic over their manual cars. Likewise, if you use a camera, once you get to this manual setting, you realize there's just so much control you have over the camera settings, over your exposure level, over whether or not if you want to adjust for the highlights, the shadows, the midtones. Like if you want to shoot a silhouette with nice blurred backgrounds, then you can speed up that shutter speed to get it to expose for the highlights and the backgrounds where the clouds and the skies are in focus, but your subject is relatively underexposed, so you can get a nice silhouette shot. Or if you want to shoot landscape and you have to open up the aperture, close down the aperture, get it to f5.6, f8, f11 sometimes, but while still maintaining a proper exposed image. Or if you would like to just underexpose it a little bit for some highlight details and to make sure that it doesn't get too underexposed or your shadow isn't too noisy. There's a lot of things that you can do once you're able to get to the point where you have manual control over your camera. And once you get there, sure, it's gonna take a little bit longer because you're just dialing all these settings yourself. You have to check the setting, you have to check the scene, you have to look through your camera and then be like punching the settings. It might slow down your workflow a little bit, but again, once you get adjusted to it, once you're no longer scared of the manual settings, it'll be fine. And trust me, there are so many times when I first started taking pictures, now I'm looking back at it, I wish I shot so many different things in manual settings, because there are times where there are just motion blurs that I didn't want and the camera couldn't really accommodate for all those things, that I'd rather just do it myself and edit it in post, where I can just save that image and it'll just look so much better than if the camera decided for me. Yeah, okay, quick little video. Thank you guys for 600 subscribers. Never thought I would ever see this day coming. Yeah, gonna try to do a couple more videos. Definitely gonna do a video on the Fuji X-E3. It's just I'm still using it, trying to get more comfortable with this camera. This is a completely different system than I'm usually used to. So there's some other stuff that I have to just get more familiar with it and understand it a little bit better before I make a video and talk about my thoughts on it and just generally why I bought this camera when I already have like too many cameras. Where that's a conversation we're not getting into today. But yeah, super appreciate you guys watching this, and yeah, just very happy. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.